One thing you'll notice about making scripts in Roblox is that changing most object properties with local scripts is only visible for that one player. Why is that? Well, Roblox created an anti-cheat system called FilteringEnabled. Before FilteringEnabled, local scripts could influence objects that everyone could see. Why was this a bad thing? Well, some players found ways to add their own scripts to games and would use them to break games, give them boosts, or do other things to cause havoc. FilteringEnabled solves most of those problems, but some problems still exist. For example, exploiters can still edit their personal character to change their position, walking speed, etc. to give them an advantage, but it prevents them from messing with the core gameplay of your projects. This anti-cheat system is beneficial to use, but sometimes you might need to send values from the player to the server, and vice versa. How would you go about doing that? Well, one way is to use remote event objects in your projects. Remote events allow you to pass information from server to client and vice versa. Utilizing remote events allows local scripts to perform tasks that only the player can see, while sending information to server scripts for actions that require the server to perform. One example is that if you have a store in your game and you include a button on the player's screen to purchase an item. You can use a remote event to tell the server, hey, this player wants to buy this item from the in-game store. Can you check to see if they have the money? If they do have enough money, subtract that amount from their balance and give them the item. Also, could you send them a response back that they bought the item? You wouldn't necessarily want to have a local script perform that action because you don't want to store the player's balance locally, because they could influence that really easily. You also don't want to store items in a location that the player can access because they could take those items from those locations by cheating. This leads to the safer way of tracking player balances on the server, storing items in server storage, and scripts in server script service. Now that we know why we use remote events, let's get into how we can use them in our projects. To start using remote events, find a good place to store the remote event in your project. I recommend using replicated storage if both the server and local scripts can access that service. Right-click on the location you want to put it in and move your mouse to Insert Object and then to Remote Event. After adding it to the location, rename the event to something relevant to what you're using it for. For this example, I'm going to name it Message Event as I want to pass a message to the server and have the server send a message back. After you name it, you can create a new variable in your scripts with the object location of your remote event. Now whenever you need to send information to the server, type the variable name for the event and then fire server with the values you need passed inside the parentheses. You can pass any value inside the parentheses whether you want to have multiple separate values on the receiving side or a single table to use. Your remote event is now firing information to the server, but you also need to set up a way for the server to utilize that information. You can do this by creating a server script with the remote event's location as a variable. After that, create a local function that you would like to receive the values. Remote events fired to the server always include the player that sent the event, so the first value in the function's parentheses should be the new variable to define the player, followed by the new variables to represent the values sent from the local script. Now that you have the function set up, you'll need to detect when the remote event is fired to the server by typing the remote event's variable name, followed by a period and then onServer event. For the final step, connect the event to the local function. Now that you have it set up to send values to the server from the player, you can use those values to perform actions on the server that local scripts can't do. If you like to send values to the local scripts from the server, you can do that by typing fire client after the remote event's variable name, with the first value sent being the player object found in game.players, and then the values you wish to send. In the local script that you're using to receive the values, you would format it like we've done in the server script, but use onClient event instead of onServer event. If you want to send a value to all the players at once, you'd use fire all clients followed by the value instead.